Welcome to Recovered1440.com, Cabin Fever, episode 8. My name is Bobby and I'm an addict. This is a podcast for people who might be struggling with addiction, might not know what addiction is, people who might have started taking drugs or drinking recreationally and can't stop, or when they do stop, they can't stay stopped. When I was deep in the madness, I didn't have a way out. I used to Google how to kill myself in the least painful way and how to beat drug addiction, and I was told it was going to be an arduous battle for the rest of my life, and that is not the case. Me and my friends are extremely lucky. We've found a fellowship that's granted us a new way of life, and this podcast series is to show you that way of life. I'm joined today by a good friend of mine, someone that I admire and whose story I would like you to hear. So with that in mind, I'll hand the meeting over to you, Stu, as it were.
Lovely, thank you very much, Bobby. Yeah, it's lovely to be sitting here and being able to do a bit of service, and I'm very grateful and very privileged that you've asked me to be part of this podcast. And you know, when I look back at the start of the book, and when you look at the forward to the first edition all the way through to the forward to the fourth edition, you know, as I understand it, they're going to be writing a forward to the fifth edition, but the forward to the first edition says about how they communicated with people, and it was all done by letter and responding back to people individually by pen and paper. Mm-hmm. And you know, when this opportunity come about, you know, I would imagine that when the forward to the fifth edition comes about and is written, I'll be interested to read that, because there's so many different ways that we can get across the message of the 12-step program. Means like this, you know, like podcasts. You know, we have the Zoom meetings. WhatsApp is a big part of my unity with other fellows within the fellowship. Social media plays a big part. So I imagine there's going to be a lot written about that in the forward to the fifth edition when that comes out. But yeah, it's nice to be sitting here a little bit out of my comfort zone. But I start my day off exactly the same. You know, I'm very consistent in what I do now, and it allows me to go through the day and manage it in the best way that I'm able to. You know, we all get up in the mornings, and it's very easy to just get straight into those external things. You know, we get up, we'll have a shower. You know, if you're a guy, you might have a shave, bit of aftershave, cup of tea, have some breakfast. If you're a lady, you might sort of do your makeup, do your hair, have a look in the mirror, just make sure that everything's matching. And we do all these external things, but for me, it's important for me to start my day internally. Now, if I have to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning, my alarm goes off at 6:20. And the first thing I do in the morning to start my day internally, to make sure that I'm ready for any of those external things that may come about, is I reach for my phone and I open up my spiritual toolkit. And the first thing that I do is I'll read the On Awakening reading, because for me that's how I want to conduct my next 24 hours, and it tells me how best to conduct my next 24 hours. And then I go to the daily reflections reading, and that's like a little advent calendar. You know, every day I get excited, you know, seeing what that is, seeing what it is that I can read and what they've put on there for me. Then I do my meditation, and then I do my prayers, and then by that time I'm ready to go and do those external things that I just mentioned. I'll go and have a cup of tea and get myself ready to go and start my day. But if I don't start my day like that, then I feel like I've missed something when I go out my house. So all through my recovery of coming in this time round, I've been very consistent in what I do. You know, someone said to me once about fear, and I've had fear through the whole of my life, but I didn't know what fear was. And sitting here, I'm feeling a little bit of fear. But when I got asked to do my first chair, I remember standing in the kitchen of the place where the meeting was for the 12-step program, and someone who is now my sponsor, he said to me, he said, "How are you feeling?" I said, "Oh, I'm really nervous." And my watch was reading, and I exercise quite a lot, and I can go and get on the treadmill and I can go and run at say 130 beats a minute, but I remember standing still in the kitchen because I had a tea commitment at this meeting, and I was standing there and my heart was pounding so much, and I looked at my watch and I was going at 141 beats a minute, because that was the type of fear that I had at that particular time. And through going through this work has allowed me to identify what my core fear is. But this guy said to me, he said, fear, it can be a real challenge, can't it? He said it can be a mile wide and a mile high. And I'm thinking, yeah, he knows how I'm feeling. But then he hit me with a punchline and said to me, "But it's only a millimetre thick."
I love that.
And that put me sort of a little bit at ease. And this 12-step program has given me the courage to be able to push through that fear, because I would never have pushed through that fear before. I would have always run away from it. You know, how I look at myself now and what I've learnt about myself through this 12-step program is that my core fear, or one of my core fears, is vulnerability. I don't like being vulnerable.
Wow.
I don't like being in a situation where someone can judge me. I worry so much about what people are going to think of me, and I don't like doing anything where I can be embarrassed. And that fear, I can now look at taking that back to my school days. You know, not long ago, within the last couple of years, I found out I'm dyslexic. And we all like doing things. Everyone likes doing things that they're good at, and don't like doing things that they're not good at. But when I look back at my school days, whenever it come to something theory based, that was my cue to muck around. If they said, "Stuart, start reading from the next paragraph," I would do whatever I could to be disruptive and get kicked out of the class. I would sooner be the class clown and miss the lesson and stand out in the corridor than people think that I was stupid. And I wouldn't want to read because I had that fear of worrying about what people thought of me and how I come across, and being embarrassed. You know, my wife said to me, "Why didn't you ever say that to the teacher?" Because back when I was at school, the answer from the teacher would have been, "Right, Stuart, read the next 2 paragraphs because you need the practice." And because I wasn't good at reading, I never wanted to practice it. I didn't have the patience to do it because I didn't like it because I wasn't any good at it. And as I say, I've carried that fear through the whole of my life. You know, I always thought that fear was watching a horror film or being chased by someone. I didn't realise how many other fears there are. You know, apparently we're only born with 2 fears, the fear of noise and the fear of falling. But the rest they all grow throughout our life. And it's taken me a long time to get to this stage in life and in my recovery. You know, 16 years ago I first come into these rooms and got introduced and had the seed planted about the 12-step program, but I didn't get it because I didn't get the total abstinence. I come in these rooms with a cocaine problem, and I didn't think that anything else was a problem. I then had another go. First time when I come in, I wasn't prepared to stop smoking weed, and they told me I was an alcoholic, and I'd never really liked drink. Drink was never really my thing. But to be told I was an alcoholic was enough for me to go back out there and prove, I don't know who I wanted to prove to, but because I didn't want that label and I had that perception of an alcoholic, I went back out there and I dry sniffed for a good few years, until in the end the drinking become to a level where I was drinking with alcoholic tendencies. And I come back in the rooms probably about 10, 11 years ago from now, a few years after I come in the first time round, prepared to give up drinking and to give up sniffing, but I didn't want to give up smoking weed. But then when I've come in this time round, it's been completely different. You know, I've realised what this program is all about. It's not just getting you off the drink and drugs. For me, it's rebuilt me from the inside out. It's not only removed that obsession. You know, I've got a new way of thinking, a new way of living, a new way My morals have all changed, the way I treat people, and everything has become a lot better as a result of it. But when I come in the meetings this time round, I was still riddled with that fear of being judged. And the thought of picking up one of those readings in the meetings could have almost stopped me going to the meetings. But when I heard what I heard in the meetings this time round, I heard it with complete different ears, and I knew that I wanted it because I was so broken with a spiritual malady. I didn't have any spiritual malady inside. I was so broken when I didn't know how to live, but I wanted what people had that I was meeting in the rooms. I wanted it this time round, which was a complete different way to me looking at it when I come in the first 2 times. And to help me get over that fear, I ended up printing off all of them readings. I used to sweat at the thought of picking up a reading because of a fear of being judged. And I used to either pass them to someone else, or I would even think twice about going to a meeting unless I knew it was going to be busy. And that way I'd know someone else would be doing the readings. But what I'd done to overcome that fear was I printed all of them readings. I went onto the 12-step fellowship website and I printed all of them readings off. And I practiced them. They're sitting in my bedside cabinet still. And I practiced them over and over again because I wanted to engage in the meetings. And that was what helps me stay in the meetings, being able to pick up a reading. And then when it comes to sharing, back after someone had done their chair, I used to sit there and think so deeply about what I wanted to share. I never had a problem in thinking about something to share because I always find, and even now, if someone's done a chair and it's not based on what my experience was, I can still find similarities because I suffer with that disease of addiction. So whether it be the powerlessness, the progression, I can find similarities in what they've shared about. And I would sometimes want to share, rehearse it so much in my head, worry so much about remembering it, worrying about what people was going to think of how I've shared, that I would miss the opportunities and then the meeting would be over. And I'd go away from that meeting frustrated that I didn't have the confidence to share, I didn't have the courage to share. So eventually I developed the courage through continually going to the meetings and learnt to open my mouth, and I learnt to just pick out one thing that I could relate to, and that would be what I would start sharing on. And then the sharing became a lot more comfortable and a lot more confident as time went on, and I felt as if I was becoming part of this fellowship. But I still used to sit there and think to myself, there's no way you're ever going to get me sitting up there doing a chair. I would sooner relapse before sitting up there. It was painful when I was in active addiction and painful when I was trying to work this out myself. But the thought and the fear of sitting up there and doing a chair, like I'm able to sit here now and talk about my experience, riddled me with fear. And the courage that I've got from this fellowship and the support from the people that I've got around me. And I remember you always saying to me, Bobby, when I did have the confidence to share, I always remember you sort of making me feel comfortable afterwards. Lovely to hear you, really nice to hear you speak. And that filled me with a lot of confidence. So I owe to you a lot in allowing me to develop my confidence and courage in being able to be more involved in the meetings. Going back to my school days, I had many friends at school. I was always a middle of the road person. I could mix with everybody. I always stuck up for the people that were being bullied. I didn't like to see people being bullied, but I could get on with the in kids. I could get on with the not so in kids, and I just got on with everyone because I wasn't a troublemaker at school. I just fitted in and liked getting on with people, but I always grew up with that fear. I left school at the age of 15. When I was 12, I started work. I left school with 2 qualifications. I left school with woodwork, cookery, common sense. I'd like to think I had an amount of common sense, and work ethic. Because at the age of 12, I started working. I always wanted a motorbike as a kid, but I wasn't allowed one. So I ended up getting a job at the local golf range, and I used to pick balls up every morning before school. I'd go to work, come home, get ready for school, and then go to school. Every evening after school, I used to work at the driving range, serving the balls out to the customers. On a Sunday, I used to pick the balls up in the morning, and then I used to have my own car washing business after that. So I used to go around knocking on people's doors. This was before car washes were as readily available as they are now, but I used to go around knocking on people's doors with my bucket and sponge. Do you want your car washed? And I had regular customers that I used to do every week or every other week. And then on the Saturday morning I used to do a milk round. So I used to get up, meet the milkman at 5 o'clock in the morning. And then in between all of that I used to have a free paper round as well. So I've never ever been shy of work.
No.
And at the age of 14 I was already playing golf at the age of 14. So the golf range that I worked at, they saw my interest in golf and saw, he must have seen some sort of potential there, and certainly saw my work ethic. And they said to me, you know, when you leave school, if you want a career in golf, there's a job here for you. So being told that at the age of 14, I thought to myself, that's great. You know, I can skip the last part of school, because in my head I was thinking to myself, you go to school to get a job, to buy a house, to have a family and live happily ever after. And that was how I thought the progression of life was. So being told at the age of 14, I've already, you know, I've got a job for when I leave school. I don't really have to worry about exams and that. So, and I didn't get entered in for many exams. As I say, I only come out with woodwork and cookery. But being two practical exams, I quite enjoyed those. I think I was ungraded and not entered for many of the other ones. And I can't ever remember doing homework, probably because I was out working all the time. But because I was going to work in a professional industry, you know, I was working and mixing with professional sports people and professional people. I had this image that I wanted to project. You know, I had an image of how I wanted people to see me. So going to pubs and smoking cigarettes wasn't ever part of the image that I wanted to project. Plus as well, every time I did go to the pub, you know, I'd drink with a purpose of getting drunk, and I'd get terrible hangovers. So that was never really anything. I didn't want to be seen walking around the streets with a cigarette, and I didn't want to be seen sort of in the pubs all the time. So that wasn't really my thing. But at the age of 16, with some of my schoolmates, you know, I could roll a joint before I smoked it, because I wanted to fit in.
Yeah.
And then when I did start smoking, you know, it was a bit solid then, you know, that was alright because I was fitting in with people. And then I had 3 big circles of friends. I had a circle of friends that I went to school with, I had a circle of friends that I played golf with, and I had a circle of friends from my girlfriend, who's now my wife, from her school, because I've been with her sort of from early on. And in every group they all puffed. So I could puff with all of them, and I didn't mind being a puffhead, because it was done in secret, so it wasn't being out there and people wasn't seeing me other than the people that I puffed with. So I puffed from the age of 16 right through to the age of 48. You know, so I and probably every day, there wasn't a day that I went without a joint. So all through them years, there hasn't been a day gone by where I haven't taken something to change the way that I feel. But because I wasn't a pub person, the rave scene come around, and I used to love going out doing pills on a weekend. But even when I was doing pills, when I took a pill, I'd always have that little bit of worry, what if I die? Now I've taken it, there's no more, nothing I can do, it's in my system. But once I come up, that's it, I knew it was working. And as soon as I started to come down, I wanted to get back up again, so I'd have another one. And it got to the stage, and this is back in the 90s when pills were good. You know, my pill taking then sometimes will get up into double figures, and you know, I would get buckled on pills, but it was only a weekend thing. Still puffing all through the week, but the pills were a weekend thing, and there was a good crowd of us that went out raving, and I loved it. I loved them days, and I don't regret those days. But what they did do is they probably led me in to the stage when cocaine came along, and this is probably 30 years ago now. 30 years ago when I was 20, about when I was 20, that I had my first line. And my thinking behind that was, if I use cocaine, I can control the level of my buzz in smaller increments. I thought, I don't have to hang on when I'm coming up. I can just chip away at it and control it in a more civil way, you know. And plus as well, back then I saw it as a bit of a classy drug. You know, the celebrities, the superstars, the rich, the famous, all the city workers, they're the ones that done it. So I didn't see it as a dirty drug. I saw it as a classy drug. But for me, what happened was, Fridays and Saturday nights would be getting a bit of gear, chipping away at it, but the progression went very quickly, because what was a Friday, Saturday night very quickly become a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday night, which very quickly become a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday night, and then before I knew it, it was every day of the week. Now, it wouldn't be that I'd smash myself to pieces with it, but I always felt comfort having it on me, because I always had it there. It was almost like a bit of a comfort blanket. And I look back at my using, and my using I divide up into 3 stages. The first part of my using, I don't regret. I look back and I had some great times. I got some great memories. I was the first one out, the last one to leave. You know, I could talk all night, and it was really fun. And when people say about when did you cross the line, I suppose I crossed the line in the middle part of my using. And when I section it into the 3 parts, the middle part of my using, my mates would be going out on a weekend, but I'd been using every day through the week. And I'm tired when I go out on the weekend, and they're all full of life to go out on the weekend. And I would go out and I couldn't wait to start sniffing. Drinking still wasn't my sort of flavour, if you like, but I used to drink to sort of get myself going, and then I'd sniff to sober myself up, and then I'd sniff too much that I couldn't speak, so then I'd drink faster to try and get my voice back, and in the end the night was just batting the two off with each other. Drinking more to be able to speak, sniffing more to be able to get that buzz, forgetting that I couldn't speak a little while ago, and then very early into the night I'm already uncomfortable. When I used to go out, I used to because I never used to see myself as selfish, which I know that I'm very selfish when I let it come into me. It's one of my defects. And I used to go out I used to buy an 8 for gear, but because it used to come in sort of 0.9, so I used to haggle the dealer and he used to give me 4 wraps. And that was when a gram was a gram. Now they say sort of a ticket is a ticket and it's sort of 0.4. I used to buy a full gram, but I'd have one that I would go out and I'd share. Because if someone said to me, because I was always the one that had gear, they go, "Oh, you got a little live?" And I said, "Yeah, come on, I'll put you one out." So I was the one who would put you out a line of gear, but that would be my one to share. I'd have another one in my pocket that no one knew about, and I'd have another 2 at home for when I got home. So people didn't know to the extent in which I was becoming dependent on it. And very early in the night I would go home, I would duck out and go home because I was too uncomfortable. I couldn't get on the same level that my mates were on. They was laughing and having a good time, but I was just uncomfortable. So I used to duck out and go home early. So from something that was a party drug, gradually started to become an isolating drug. The third part of my using, when I say I break it up into 3 parts, I become very isolated. I never bothered going out. I didn't want to be in people's company. I didn't like being around people. I just wanted to use on my own. But all the way through this, because I had work ethic, I think it allowed me to almost stay in denial of my addiction for quite a long time. Because if I got up for work in the morning, and if I had a couple of days clean time here and there, I could tell myself that I was in control of it, when really I wasn't. And when people say about the perception of an addict or an alcoholic, because I was going to work and getting a couple of days clean time, I still didn't think that I was an addict or an alcoholic. But my sofa in the end become my park bench. All I would do is go to work, stay on my sofa. The only good bit about getting on the gear in the end was the going and getting it. That was the only good bit that I enjoyed. That feeling of I'm going to get it. But I knew what I was in for every single time. You know, I'd get up in the morning, only having a little bit of sleep, telling myself, why did I do it to myself? Why did I put myself through it? I didn't enjoy the using. I've been sitting there all night, television on mute, thinking I can still hear it, looking at the CCTV cameras on my phone. Any little bit of noise would make me uncomfortable. I had this image that I wanted people to see me as. So I'm getting so far detached from what I wanted, my ego and what my image was and where I was actually at. You know, I used to even take my Fitbit, I had a Fitbit at the time, I used to even take that off when I was using because I didn't want it to destroy my stats. That's how in denial I was. Because I could look at my stats and think, yeah, I'm alright.
Yeah.
But where I know that I can feel my heart pumping out my chest, but my watch would have given away to me what was actually going on with my body. You know, I've tried so many different ways of thinking my way out of this illness. You know, because of the image that I wanted people to see me as, I thought to myself, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a marathon. That might help me. So I started exercising, and like it says in the book, we try so many different ways to, you know, whether it would be changing our using, changing our drinking, changing the type of drink. You know, for me, sometimes I'd try and put a little line out instead of having a big line the size of a slug. But all I'd find is that as soon as I do that, I just go back there even quicker. So I done a marathon, and all through my marathon training up, and it was because I wanted people to see me as this fit, healthy person who works in sport. But all through my marathon training, my best thinking was, if I get as stoned as I can before I go out on a run, I'm not going to think about how far I've got to run. All I've got to do is just, with my numb, stoned head, lean forward and my legs would take me. But then because I go out and I run at a good distance, I'd come back and I'd deserve a treat. So I'd still call it on when I got home. And my cycle of getting up in the morning, why did I do it to myself, would be the same every single day. I'd done that marathon and that was alright, and I used straight after it because I just run a marathon and I wanted to treat myself. But I ended up doing another one, and my training routine was exactly the same. Getting stoned, thinking it's going to help me go and run a long distance, calling it on afterwards because I deserve it. But the night before the marathon, I had the bright idea of getting a bit of gear and putting it in the cupboard so I've got it there for when I finish the marathon. And I'm sitting there in that irritable, restless, discontent stage. The obsession of the mind starts going. I'm thinking about this gear in the cupboard. Then I start telling myself, well, I'm not going to get a sleep straight away because I'm a bit anxious about the run tomorrow. So it'll be a good idea to just have a little line. That was about 8 o'clock in the evening. Now, sometimes what I used to do, if I was going out the next day and I had to get the gear the night before, I'd wrap it up in insulating tape so I couldn't get to it as easy. So it would make it a little bit harder, trying to make it easier for me to sit through that irritable, restless discontent. It would never stay wrapped up. I'd unwrap it, put a bit out, and then wrap it up again. And come the next day, it's all gone. But anyway, I had this bright idea of just having a little one the night before the marathon. And 4 o'clock in the morning, I'm still sitting there, thinking to myself, why did I do this to myself? I've got to be up in 2 hours and I've got to go and run 26 and a bit miles. Fortunately, I went through with it and I'd done it and I didn't kill myself as a result of it by the strain that I put my body under. But like I say, that guilt and remorse every single day when I got up, knowing that I've got a full day's work, why did I do it to myself? I'm not going to do it tonight. And I'd go to work, get to about 2 o'clock, and up until then I've told myself I'm not going to do it. But by then the tiredness has started to wear off. Because another thing I used to do is I used to drink a lot of energy drinks. I used to drink a lot of Red Bulls, trying to chase that high and trying to get rid of my tiredness and to help get me through the day, to the extent where I ended up having a brain scan with the amount of Red Bulls that I was drinking, trying to chase that high. But come 2 o'clock, and it was literally like clockwork every day, as soon as that obsession come on me, I knew I was going to use at the end of the day. And the only thing that could get me through the rest of my day at work was telling myself I'm going to pick up when I finish work. And when I finished work, I didn't have any choice in it. You know, I was powerless at this stage. My addict would already make the phone call, but what I didn't know then, my God conscious voice, it wasn't very loud, because I'll come onto that in a minute. But you know, there was a small voice, a little whisper that said to me at the end of the day, don't do it, go home, just have an early night. But my addict would tell me that I'm the only one in the world not doing it that night, and I felt I was missing out. And I would go home, party for one, and when I walked indoors, I had two justifications to tell my wife. I've either had a good day at work or I've had a bad day at work, and the only difference would be the tone of my voice. I'd go in and I'd go, oh, I've had a great day at work today, so I've got a bit of gear. Or I'd go in and I'd go, oh, I had a shit day at work today, so I've got a bit of gear. And justify it by changing the tone of my voice. Now, poor me.
Yeah.
Or, well done, I deserve it because I've had a good day. Or, you know, I deserve the treat because it's not been the best day at work. And that cycle was the same for such a long time. Now, I've heard many people say that we're the last people to see our addiction. And my sister recognised it in me a long time ago, say 16 years ago, which is when I first had this seed of the 12-step fellowship sown on me. And she knew someone that was already in this program, and they phoned me up. It was when I was on my way home from work, and they phoned me up and we had an hour's conversation, and he was 12-stepping me. He was telling me about his experience, and I was relating so much to it, and he was talking to him about my using, and he convinced me to go to a meeting, and this meeting was in West London, and I used to see it as like a Sunday night out. I used to go over there because I knew I had a cocaine problem. I wanted to stop sniffing gear, but I couldn't, so I was prepared to give it a go. But like I say, they told me I was an alcoholic as well, because they said, when you drink, do you sniff? I said yes. And when you sniff, do you drink? I said yes. How often do you sniff? Every day. Well, you're an alcoholic then. So that's when I went back out there and had to prove to myself that I wasn't an alcoholic by dry sniffing for another few years, until eventually the drinking became as much of a problem as well, because they just went together like toast and butter. And then I had another go at the rooms, but this time around I couldn't get the God word. You know, I wasn't prepared to give up puffing, because I thought to myself that was keeping my brain from going like a washing machine. So I wasn't prepared to go total abstinence. I didn't know the concept of it all. And I remember sharing in a meeting that night, and I used to, my ignorance used to pick religion apart to try and find a way to say, you know, I used to think I was so powerful, I've got to carve my way through life, and I'm going to be who decides where my destination is. I'm not going to be led by anyone else. I'm my own person. And I remember sharing in a meeting, and I used to go to a meeting and it was quite an affluent area where I used to travel to go to this meeting, because I liked the shoes they wear. I liked they all had Gucci loafers and Armani jeans, and you know, I didn't want that sort of image of an addict. So I went to meetings where they I knew they was going to be like that, and you know, they wasn't all like that, but there was a lot of Gucci loafers and Armani jeans there. And I remember sharing in this meeting about how I was struggling with the concept of God, and I went home and I used to listen to a lot of Joe and Charlie, thinking that they was going to help me, and they did help me to a certain extent, because they give me a lot of understanding of it. You know, where I couldn't read, and I didn't like reading, I wasn't good at reading, and I wasn't one to pick up the book and read the book. So I listened to a lot of Joe and Charlie, and I picked out bits that I wanted to do. I knew I was powerless. I couldn't get the God situation. I knew I had to make amends to people. I had the Serenity Prayer tattooed on my back. So there's me, knowing I'm powerless, got the Serenity Prayer tattooed on my back, went out, started doing step 9s, making amends to people, getting told where to go, thinking, well, why aren't they getting it, you know? And it was me that wasn't getting it. But when I did get a little bit of clean time, so I got a phone call, sorry, just going back there, I got a phone call after that meeting that I shared about not getting the God situation. And I got a phone call that night. I was in my garage having a joint, probably listening to a bit of Joe and Charlie, thinking that I'm getting this. And I got a phone call from this man, and he said, I heard you in the meeting, you're struggling with the word God. I said, yeah, I can't get it, I can't get my head around it. And he told me what it was all about. He explained to me that it's a spiritual program, it's a God of your own understanding. Now, I love nature, I love the outdoors, and the starting point of a God of my own understanding was, you know, who brings the tide in, who takes the tide out, who makes the grass grow. Yeah, I've got to cut the grass, but but who makes the grass grow? Who makes the leaves fall off the trees in the autumn, and who puts them back on there in the spring, and who makes the sun shine? So that was my way of getting belief of a God of my own understanding. But it never developed to the stage of having faith, because for me, how I understand it, belief has got to come before faith. Now I've gone from atheist to agnostic to then having belief, but I didn't have any faith. Now, as a result of not wanting to commit to the program and just picking out bits, thinking that I can think my way out of it because I've got a little bit of taste of recovery now and I can do this on my own, I'm still in that cycle of getting up every day, going to work and thinking that I've got it under control. And the part where I did get it a little bit under control was just before I come in the rooms this time round. And I got my longest bit of clean time. But as I say, I've puffed every day from the age of 16. And towards the end, when I did get a little bit of clean time, I started to thaw out from the drinking and from the sniffing. It was the most broken that I had ever felt. Because I was starting to sort of think to myself, you know, I was so uncomfortable inside. Used to think to myself, you know, what is life all about? Is this what life is like? I'm so uncomfortable. Life is like an uphill struggle. I had 2 cousins that took their own life as a result of this illness. And I'm thinking to myself, you know, what is life all about? It just seems like an uphill struggle. Every day was a challenge. And as much as I didn't sort of think about killing myself, I was just sort of waiting for the day to get old and die because I didn't know how to live. And I diagnosed myself with depression, anxiety, social anxiety, and I'm doing all this self-help stuff. I'm reading books, not reading books, I'm listening to audio books, how to win friends and influence people, trying to sort it out. And when I look back at that, how to win friends and influence people, because I was so selfish and manipulating and controlling, which I now know are some of my defects of characters, I interpreted that book as how can I manipulate people? How can I get people to do what I want them to do? How can I be that actor who runs the show in a better way and still get them to like me? So I tried all these self-help things and I was just so uncomfortable with life, you know, and just waiting to get old and die. Until in the end I went to see a psychiatrist. And I told him all about my past, and you know, I thought that he might be able to give me a pill and fix me and make me feel better, and then I can still puff and I can live a happy life. But after telling him about my journey, he gave me the best advice I'd ever got. He said, what I suggest you do, I suggest you go back to the meetings, get back into the 12-step program and finish off what you started. So I went back to the meetings this time round, and like I said, I was so uncomfortable and so broken inside that I heard what was being said in these meetings completely different to the first 2 times when I come in. Yeah, so I've lived many years uncomfortably and trying to battle my way through life and trying to work it out myself. But I heard something in these meetings that I knew I wanted it, and that's why I committed to it. Like I said at the beginning, I printed off the readings. I wanted to engage in the meetings. It made me develop the courage to be able to share back, to then grow to the person that I am today that can say yes to service. And my life has completely changed today. You know, my sponsor said to me, you know, if you want a shortcut to recovery, go home and get your book out and go to page 112 and read the first 3 words. It's all in those first 3 words. So being an addict and wanting everything now, or yesterday, I've gone home, I've gone to page 112, looked at the first 3 words and it said, read this book. And that was a little nugget that I now know that the answer for me and where I am today lies in that book. And someone else said something to me that I picked up when I was coming this time round. They said, you know, imagine you've got a ball and chain around both legs. The ball and chain around your left leg is your drink and drugs. The ball and chain around your right leg is yourself. Now the first part of those steps, step 1, 2 and 3, is going to help you remove that obsession of the drink and drugs. But then once you've got rid of that ball and chain, you've still got the other ball and chain of yourself. The rest of it, step 4 through to 11, is going to remove that ball and chain of yourself. Now I started thinking about that and thinking, yeah, I can relate to that because I love an analogy. And I thought, yeah, when I do that and I get rid of that ball and chain, I get rid of that ball and chain, I'm going to get a key. And then I'm at step 12 and I can start going around and unlocking other people's ball and chain and help setting them free and giving them the life that I've got today. But where I've realised this program gives me so much more than just getting rid of that obsession of drink and drugs and how it's rebuilt me as a person. I like things that make me feel good. Drink and drugs made me feel good at the beginning, but then they stopped working and I spent years trying to get that same feel good back like I had at the beginning from drink and drugs. But this program has given me this. So why would I stop being involved in this program, in these 12 steps and in this fellowship and something that makes me feel as good as it does today? You know, if I want to get fit, just buying a gym membership is not going to get me fit. I have to go to the gym and I have to work at it. And if I go to the gym and work at it and I get to a level of fitness, I can't expect to maintain that level of fitness without continuing to train. So if I want to get fit, I've got to buy a membership, I've got to go to the gym and I've got to keep training. When I get fit, I've got to keep doing it. This has brought me to a stage of almost spiritual fitness and my mental fitness. Because all those things that I self-diagnosed myself with, surprisingly enough, they've gone. So I now consider myself a lot more spiritually fit than I ever have been. And this program keeps giving me that. So for me, if I want to maintain that, I've got to be consistent in what I do. I've got to continue to work hard at what I do. I've got to practice these 12 steps on a daily basis. As it says, you know, practice these steps in all our affairs. You know, I have to apply these in everything that I do. And if I keep doing what I do today, working on myself with my routine in the morning, fixing myself inside, I know what my defective characters are. If I'm in a day and I feel my defects rearing up, I recognise that. And as long as my defective characters don't rear up and come to the surface, then I'm being me. And today I quite like myself. So if I quite like myself and I'm not acting out on my defective characters, I haven't got to worry about what other people think of me. Not everyone is going to like me, but I haven't got to worry about that because I know that I'm not being someone who I am meant to be. And I'm meant to be this person today. And I really like where I am. And it's all credit to this 12-step program, the fellowship, the network of people that I've got around me. And I do everything that was suggested. I got myself a sponsor early on this time round. I got myself a service commitment. I went through the work. You know, I've been through the steps twice now. I'm taking other people through, and I just love giving back with it. You know, I like where I am today. So if I like it and it makes me feel good, being an addict, why would I want to stop doing it? And I think I'll leave it there.
Fucking good, Stu. Mate, I'm so pleased that you came over and agreed to do this because I've long admired you in the rooms, you know, like whenever you mentioned earlier about me being kind to you after you share, but that's just genuine because of the way that you were sharing, you know, it's powerful stuff. This is a beautiful life that we've got today, but so much of what you said like it brought up stuff for me, like the whole idea that cocaine's a classy drug. I remember being at Wickford Station and I'm banging on the cubicle because there's someone doing crack in there and I'm thinking, will this fucking cunt hurry up because I want to get in there and do my cocaine, like I'm judging him. But those delusions and the powerlessness of it all, and what you said as well, that I'm never going to do this again. How the fuck have I done this again? And at some point in the day, that peculiar mental twist that the book talks about, my thinking changes, and I think, you know, maybe I'll be all right. And I could never understand the idea of being allergic to drink or drugs. You know, I couldn't hear that. I'd come in the rooms and, you know, I suppose there's a lot to be said about being ready. You know, and when my sponsor explains it like a frenzy inside of me. If there's a piranha tank in there, I can't just put one in and go, oh shit, sorry, changed my mind. I cannot control it, you know. On my gratitude list this morning, it was I'm grateful that I'm not nicking the car at 4 o'clock in the morning and driving 110 miles an hour because I cannot not have it. I have to have it, you know. I've never had to encounter something as powerful as addiction but it wiped the floor with me. Absolutely wiped the floor with me, and I was at a loss. I really was. Going through the process for you, is there a particular step that you jumped out at you, or that you felt like you've been? Because it's beautiful, and we all know one leads into the next. But was there a particular one that you felt the most growth, or that changed things for you, or?
I suppose step one I did have a problem with. I knew I was powerless. You know, I came to believe from when I come in the second time round. But when it come to me handing my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand Him, you know, I had to look up all these words. You know, when I do that on awakening reading, Thy will be done. For me, going atheist, agnostic, to then having faith in the God of my own understanding, I'm thinking, what does this mean? So I had to look up these archaic words.
Yeah.
You know, Thy being another word for your, will as I understand it. If I go to a solicitor and write my will, I'm writing down my thinking. So will for me is another word for thinking. So if I'm handing my will and my life, my thinking and my life over to the care of God, I thought I was going to lose my identity, but what identity did I have? I didn't have an identity. All I had was an ego and a mask of how I wanted people to see me. So step 3, I remember sort of challenging it, you know, and I used to think, you know, I've got 2 beautiful girls. What if someone disrespects them? You know, I'm going to have to call on this nasty part of my mind, because I'm going to have to go and either make a phone call or I'm going to have to go and do something to sort someone out if they disrespect my girls, because I've got to protect them. And when I got my head round that, and that was the biggest thing, you know, I need to be there to protect my girls. But if I'm the best version of me, I'm not going to control my girls, I'm going to guide them. And they're not going to have to stand in the middle of me and my wife arguing. They're going to know the difference between right and wrong. So hopefully they know the difference between right and wrong, and they can make their own choices in life. And I can hand my will and my life over to the care of God, because it makes me the person that I can be a role model to them. And if they've got a good role model, they're going to be able to know the difference between right and wrong, and they won't get involved in situations. So I found step 3 a little bit of a barrier. Step 4 I didn't have a problem, because I understood that was going to relieve me of all the things that I had done and all the things that I was holding on to. But step 5, I challenged my sponsor with that when he said I've got to share it with another 2 people as well.
Oh, did he do that? Yeah.
Because and I asked other people, you know, where does it say that? And I was saying to him, you know, in them steps it says.
That's interesting though. That's go on, carry on.
Yeah, it says in them steps, you know, share it with another person. You know, I'd done my step 4 along with my step 5 at the same time with my sponsor, but I then went away, and it says in that book, person or persons, and I know that he wasn't asking me to do anything that he hadn't done, and I had to share it with another man.
Wow.
And a lady.
Wow.
And when I shared with a lady, it was the most freeing thing, because she sort of comforted me in a way that made me feel so at ease that I really felt that I'd got it all out. And I had to do that. That was the journey for me. Not everyone makes people do that, and not everyone does it that way. That's the way my sponsor went through it, and that was the way he wanted me to go through it. Today I love living in 10 and 11. You know, if I get a resentment or something come up, I'm straight into 10, jumps me back to 4. I go through, I work out what's it affected, my self-esteem, my pride, my personal relationship, what part has it affected, what's my part to play in it, what defect has it reared up, and then I ask it to be removed. Step 11 I live in every day. I do that every morning, work on my conscious contact with the God of my own understanding. So I like living them all, but I really love step 12. You know, I love step 12. I love helping people. You know, I've got a service position that allows me to be on the front line with people that are not quite in the meetings yet and involved in the 12 step, but they can go on the website and they can hit that live chat button, and I can then be of service to them, and I can tell them from my experience how there is a better life out there. And you know, what I do find very difficult, but it's something that I accept, is how not everyone finds their way into a 12-step program, because there's people that I communicate with that are brave enough to reach out via the website, but are too fearful of going to a meeting.
Yeah.
So then we've got options where they can have someone phone them and speak to them, someone from their area, you know, where they've got the ability to go on a Zoom meeting and keep their camera off and have the seed sown in them that way. So we just try and sort of get people understanding the 12-step program, the benefits, by telling them from our experience, and hopefully that's enough to get them into a meeting and finding a better way of life.
That's interesting what you say, because I always try and speak to the people that come on, because that fear of approaching, like most people walk up and down the street outside the meeting, you know, fearful of going in there until someone might come out and grab hold of them. But what would you say to anyone that was in that position where they're thinking of, they might be online or they might be listening to a podcast and they're thinking of going to a meeting, but they just can't get over the fear of walking over the threshold? How was you greeted in the meetings? Let me ask that question.
I was greeted in the same way that you know everyone is, with love and kindness. You know, everyone made me feel so welcome. You know, as we all try and make a newcomer feel welcome. But if I see a newcomer come up to the meetings, you know, I'll ask them, you know, is this your first meeting? And you know, I try and tell them a little bit about myself. And I try not to talk about myself too much outside of this. I try and take an interest in other people. But it's one opportunity where you can tell people about yourself or myself, for them to be able to understand that they're not in this alone, and that I am the same as them. And I always tell a newcomer, you know, I take the time to explain to them what they're going to experience in the meeting, so nothing is a surprise for them.
That's interesting.
So they don't have to share back. They don't have to pick up a reading. I know the fear that they're going to be going through from my fears that I've experienced in there. And it's a big move for someone to come to a meeting, because I see people on the front line that haven't got the courage to go to a meeting. So I know how much courage it takes to go to a meeting. So I just try and put them at ease, and I talk them through the format of the meeting.
I like that.
And about listening to the similarities, not the differences. You know, your story might not be the same as what you're going to hear up the front, but you know, they may touch on powerlessness, the obsession, the lack of choice, the lack of control, and just listen to see what is being said. Listen for those similarities. Tell them about at the end when we all stand around and do the serenity prayer. And the only bit of interaction they're going to have is going up and getting their chip. Make sure I take their number. And once I've got their number, I then take time out the next day to make sure they've got some of the tools that I've been given. You know, I send them a link to the where to find, so they can go on to a link direct to the website where they can use the drop downs and select the day, select the area, and find a meeting locally. I tell them what meetings I go to, so if they felt a connection with me, they can come and meet me at a meeting. You know, it was said to me to do a minimum 3 meetings a week. You know, I aim for 5 meetings a week because I love being there helping people. I love being part of them. I love seeing the people there. And so I just try and tell them how I've found the meetings and how it's changed my life. And you know, I use the ball and chain one as well, so that they don't sort of get to that little bit of clean time and then start thinking, I'm all right.
Yeah, I did that so many times. I'd get a couple of weeks and I'd think, oh, do you know what? I've been making too big a deal out of this. This is, you know, maybe I'm not an addict. And then I'd go back out the door for another fucking 3 or 4 years, you know? So I crawled back in and same people were sat there looking even better than they were the last time. But always loving me back, do you know? Like this, probably cliche to say that these meetings and rooms loved me before I could love myself, but that's true. That's always been true, you know. I
can often explain to people as well about we all are aware of that good devil and bad devil voice in our head. You know, I explain to people about that bad devil, the one that tells you shouldn't, you know, to do something. That's your addict, and your addict is going to try and strip you of everything you've got, and give it a couple of days, and it'll probably tell you that you don't need these meetings. But try and ignore that addict and just keep doing what the good devil in your head is telling you. You know, and if you think you don't need to go to a meeting, that's the time when you should go to a meeting, because your addict is telling you that you don't need to go.
I still feel like that now. You know, I can. I've still do 3 meetings a week. I need them. I love them, to be honest. They're a little boost of energy and that connection from people and all the rest of it. But it's easy to slip if you're not careful. I think it's been a couple of weeks since I've been to a meeting. But then these days I can tell by whether I'm, irritable, restless, or discontent. But in general, like, oh, mate, I feel so grateful to have what we've got, to be given what we've got, because for the most part of life, I just used to think, I need a fucking instruction book for this, because I just don't get it. I don't understand it. It all seemed futile. Like you said, just waiting for death almost, like, and I had no enjoyment. Any happiness I had was fleeting as well. I could be getting the nicest massage in the world and I think, well, this is going to fucking end soon. I just could not find any happiness, and I understand the difference now today between happiness and contentment. My contentment is not based on those external things that you were talking about. I love what you said about your morning routine as well, setting yourself for the day. That's key for me as well. Like, before I even get out of bed, my head's on top of me. Oh, fuck it off, Bob, don't bother today. Or just fear. It'll just try and construct some random fear. It'll go through a checklist of my life, going, that's alright, leave him with that, that's alright. Oh, look, he's a bit worried about this. And I have to invite God in. And you spoke about that as well. I had such a huge problem with that conception of a higher power. I'd come into the rooms, I'd be crippled and broken, and then they'd say the God word, and I'd think, oh, fuck off, and I'd get up and walk out. Furious, angry man. And our book tells us to seek where religious people are right, and I'd go past church and I'd think, look at these sad cunts. But the truth is that they were displaying a degree of stability in their life that I could never have hoped for, and it's not a religious program for me. I've had probably 5 or 6 different conceptions of my higher power over the time I've been about this time around, but I don't know what it is, whether it's a psychological or spiritual process, but giving my control over. I see that phrase, control freak, and I used to bristle because I hated it, because I was one. I didn't know it, but today being able to just give away that control, you spoke about that, like by leading by example with your kids, you don't have to have that element of control, do you? Because you've done the right thing. Yeah. What more can you do other than that?
What helps me a lot with getting with the sort of evolution, if you like, of the God of my own understanding, because it's my God relationship is continuing to grow. But what helps it grow a lot was someone sent me a piece of literature on the God of Spinoza,
right? And
it was something that that Einstein used to read out when he was giving lectures at university, and it was the God of Spinoza, and it's worth googling. The God of Spinoza, right. Because for me, where my connection was in nature and outside, it tells you sort of, if you can't see me in a sunrise, if you can't see me in someone else's smile, I love hiking, and that's one of the things that this fellowship has given me. Yeah, a network of people that love hiking as well, love being in the outdoors.
Yeah, we do.
So we must have done probably 20 peaks this year, and some other challenges within hiking. And I look at them mountains and I think, no one's got in a JCB and pushed them hills together and put them rocks up there. That's been created by a power greater than me, and I enjoy that beauty. And if I can't see God in a sunrise, in someone's smile, in the waves on the beach, they're all things for me that keep me connected. And something else that I've got from this fellowship and this program as well, and what helps me on a daily basis, and I see it in some people, when some people say, I'm not feeling that great, or I've relapsed or done this, I went through the first stage of my step 1. It was understanding that triangle. The triangle being made up of service, unity and recovery, encased in a circle. And the idea is for me to live a life of ease and comfort rather than a life of dis-ease and discomfort. I need to stay in the centre of that triangle. Well, how do I stay in the centre of that triangle? I need to make sure that each side is solid. So I've got my service commitments. I do my recovery. I go to meetings. I do the book work. I take people through the work, and I've got a great unity in this fellowship. After I've done my prayers and my meditation and my reading, I start reaching out to people, and that carries on throughout the day. So as long as I keep them three sides of the triangle solid, then I can stay in the centre of it. You know, it says on the beginning of the chapter 5, and I'm not a big book quoter, but this is something that really stood out to me. Very few people have failed if they've thoroughly followed our path. You know, and that to me says just do what it says in the book. You know, and when people say about, you know, they're struggling or they're relapsed, and in deeper conversation with them, you can often find that it's something that they've missed out. You know, are you still praying? Well, no, I haven't had time to pray. Are you meditating? Well, no, not really. I haven't really got time for that in the morning. Are you going to meetings? So where is your recovery? Well, I've only got time to do one meeting a week. Okay, you go. No, I've just got rid of my sponsor. You know, and when that starts to happen, and those sides of the triangle start to become fractured, for me that would put me in a dangerous place.
That's fascinating.
More so that my defects of characters will start rearing up. You know, because a drink and a drug is going to be the last thing for me. You know, I'll start.
It's the end of the relapse.
My relapse will start when I start going indoors, walking through my front door, shutting the door behind me, and then just switching off. I have to go in there, and it's, you know, I try and be as helpful as I can. You know, can I do anything to help? You know, I will empty the dishwasher, and I will do things like that. Whereas before it would have been, well, you're working from home, you can do that in between your meetings, your work meetings. So I try and be more helpful, because if I start relapsing, it will start to show at the people that I'm closest to, because they're the people that I can get away with it easiest.
That's interesting.
So I'll make sure that the people that I can get away with it are the people that I really keep my recovery at the forefront, because they're the ones that have suffered the most, and they're the ones that will get it first.
Yeah, that's interesting. I love what you said as well, because I used to come into the meeting just as it was about to start, listen to the chair, and then quickly fuck off before anyone could get hold of me, and then realise why it didn't work for me, you know. But like you said, that service, recovery, unity, talk a little bit about that, because I always love to, because we were so alone. I can't speak for you, I was so alone. I thought I was insane, I thought I was losing my mind, I thought I was the only one that was doing all the weird shit that I would do when I got on it. And then I come in and I meet people that not had the same problem that I had, but they think like me on a daily basis, and suddenly I've got people that I can trust and who understand me, you know. I never had that. It was always seemingly like the black sheep of the family, or the outcast, you know. And now suddenly I'm surrounded by people that actually know how I feel and can resonate with me, you know.
Well, unity is a big part for me. You know, like I said, it's one of the sides of that triangle. You know, I have to set my phone on sleep mode, because it was just be pinging all the time. You know, I have to have certain apps that can be activated for work purposes. But, you know, I wake up in the morning and I've got messages on there from people. You know, and I'll respond to their messages, and I'll send out messages to people. You know, and I might every now and again scroll through my phone at people with, you know, everyone in my phone who I've met through this fellowship has got the initials of the fellowship after it. And if I haven't seen someone for a while, you know, I would never have sent a voice note. I would never have gone on the WhatsApp group before. You know, I would have sooner, even down to doing a chair, if I could have done it to everybody individually, that would have been fine. But to do it to a group, put that fear in me. Too many people to judge me. You know, I'm in WhatsApp groups, and I can send out a message, you know, good morning everyone, hope you're having a lovely and blessed day. You know, at the end of the meeting, which is my home group, you know, I've got a piece of service there, so I read something at the end, tell people what's going on, and I explain the importance of that triangle. You know, I announce any service positions that are available. So I would say to people the importance of service, because without people doing service, these meetings wouldn't go ahead. You know, and this is where I realised, you know, you've got to give it away to keep it. And that made sense this time round as well. But the unity side of it, you know, in my home group, I always announce at the end of it, you know, we've got a unity group for this meeting. If anyone's not been to this meeting before or isn't on our unity group, come and give me your number afterwards. Let me put you on a unity group. So they're in contact with everyone straight away. So, and in the morning that starts pinging away. You know, if there's anyone that's struggling, you know, they've only got to put on there, not having a great day today, and that's it. Their phone will then be bombarded with people reaching out to them to make sure they're all right.
Beautiful.
So yeah, I've got people that I reach out to in the morning. I'm involved in some WhatsApp groups. Unity side of it, I go out hiking with it. I've been to weddings from people with a fellowship, and it's lovely to be part of something and to not have that social anxiety, and to be able to free myself of all the things that I diagnosed myself with.
Isn't that the truth though? I used to, 10 years I was depressed on antidepressants. These antidepressants don't work. I was sniffing copious amounts of cocaine all the time. I'd sniff the antidepressants when I ran out, because I just couldn't, horrible. This is what the book talks about, doesn't it? When we straighten out spiritually, we straighten out physically and mentally as well. And I never understood that. That's what I was lacking. That hole in the soul was what needed to be addressed. I just want to thank you, mate. If I'm honest, I want to thank you for getting out of your comfort zone and coming to do this, because you've just delivered another beautiful message. I want to thank you for being so kind and friendly in the meetings. I want to say thank you for me being able to see your journey. It's so beautiful. You see people come into these rooms and 6-12 months later they're a completely different person, and it's just absolutely beautiful. So I'm really grateful that you came. Would you do us a favour and lead us out in the usual way with a serenity prayer?
Be a pleasure.
Thank you, sir.
So thank you very much for asking me to be of service and be part of your podcast. Very honoured to be here. But if you could join with me in serenity prayer, using the word God as you come to understand Him. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Amen. Thank you very much, Stu. For anyone that might be listening, our fellowship has a set of traditions, which means that they are anonymous at the level of press. They're not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation, institutions, or any of that bollocks. But that said, if you like the sound of what we've been speaking about, then you can go on to Google, and I'm sure it'll be at your fingertips. But thank you for joining us, and until the next time, God bless.
We may refer to the source by different names: God, a higher power, the Holy Spirit, or perhaps the cosmos. This source is the entire universe, the unified field, everything that is beyond the perception of the five senses.
Just received in our news.